Erika Lee may be having a different cognitive experience of language than you and I are. Why would Lee go through the trouble of trying to spread this rumor? The high school level answer is, well, she's maybe crazy, or maybe she just got a lot of hate inside of her that she needs to get out. Okay, sure. But now let's go for like the college student level analysis of this. Why is this the particular manifestation of her racism? What is she specifically trying to achieve, and how is this the mechanism to achieve it? I've kind of come away with this way of thinking of MAGA as having this, what I'm calling a different cognitive experience of language. Here's what I mean by that. So we got Erika Lee. She sees black folks in her neighborhood, they're not speaking English, and that weirds her out. It gives her like an ick feeling. Now, you and I know that that ick feeling is called racism or xenophobia. But Erika Lee doesn't have the self-awareness to recognize that's what this is. And if she does, she doesn't have the spine to like grapple with it. If you're a white person who is having a racist thought, but you don't have the emotional tools, the intelligence, or the common sense to deal with that as a racist thought, you start to imagine it as not a racist thought that's coming from you, because you couldn't be the problem. You imagine it as a reality that's coming from the black people, from the foreign people, from the immigrant people. You're totally reasonable. They must be strange, because that would be the only way that you could have this feeling and excuse yourself for having this feeling and save face and preserve yourself in front of yourself. Well, this alternative philosophy of language is a way that you can make that happen. It works like this. Erika is having a conversation with herself inside of her own mind, and she's looking at her Haitian neighbors and she says, "That makes me feel icky." And a little voice inside of her head says, "In what way? Like icky as in you're barefoot and you stepped on something squishy outside?" Erika's conscience says, "No, that's not exactly it. Do you feel icky like in the way when you open up a ketchup bottle and you see the scabby bits on the nozzle?" "No, that's not exactly the ick either." "Okay, now I want you to imagine your neighbor kidnapping your cat and eating it. Does the ick that imagining that feel the same as the ick that you're actually feeling?" And the little gremlins inside of Erika's mind says, yes, that's it, that's the one. Now all she has to do is start accepting bad evidence or hallucinating non-existent evidence that that thing is true. And if she can do that, then she has justified the feeling without having to accept that it comes from her. It's an accountability avoidance mechanism. It's a I don't want to have to face the ugly parts of myselfism. The words that are coming out of her mouth is, "I know for a fact that my Haitian neighbors eat my pets." But what it's actually expressing is, when I see those people just existing, I feel disgusted. You and I use language completely differently. We use language to point toward things that are real and are really happening in the real world. But when Erika Lee is spreading this crazy rumor, she's using language differently. She's using it as a way to abstractly express a feeling that she has without having to say it's a feeling. She's trying to turn her feelings into facts in her own mind's eye. That's why she's going to be upset when she's presented with evidence that this is not real. That's why she's going to be angry when people tell her you made this up. Because that to her doesn't feel like just a fact check. It feels like you're trying to tell her you don't actually feel this way. If you confront her with reality, she's going to feel like you are trying to tell her that her feelings don't exist or that they're not valid. So she's going to feel like you're the liar, like you're wrong, because for her and her way of using language in this instance, you are wrong. It's a lot easier to follow MAGA logic if you stop taking what they're saying as things that they believe are true and start taking what they're saying as expressionistic beat poetry that's supposed to show you how they feel. This is where alternative facts come from. This is where post-truth comes from. This is where don't take him literally but always take him seriously comes from. It's what's happening when they call trans people or drag queens groomers. They're not literally saying that all trans people are engaged in a long-term con to try to coerce a minor into a sexual relationship. They're saying, when I look at that person just existing, just sitting there minding their own business, that drag queen, that trans person, that gay teacher, whatever, just sitting there just being themselves, minding their own business, not hurting anybody, I feel a revulsion, a horror. I feel an ick in my stomach. And it's the same or a similar one as if I were imagining a person who was engaged in a long-term coercive con to try to trick a minor into a sexual relationship. Or here's another one. In the conservative mind, we must be a meritocracy. And they worship the god of free market. And the idea that like the free market is delivering a non-socially optimal outcome is horrific to them. Like, it upsets their understanding of the natural order of things. So when a politician comes out and says, hey, what if we spend the American taxpayer money on the American taxpayer? Now all of a sudden they are confronted with this world where, like, wealth distribution maybe is socially good, maybe is morally good. And that undermines the idea of meritocracy and their understanding of how the economy is supposed to work. So when you say, hey, why don't we spend money, why don't we spend taxpayer money on taxpayers, they'll call you a commie, they'll call you a socialist, they'll call you comrade, right? You and I know that, like, Joe Biden isn't, like, working overtime to try to establish a classless, moneyless utopia, right? Like, we know that he's not a communist. Everybody knows, like, it doesn't make any sense. But what they're trying to express is he is talking, when he says redistribution of wealth, he is talking in a way that undermines my understanding of how the free market and capitalism is supposed to work. Economics is counterintuitive, and it's, like, very confusing to understand, and it's very big and amorphous, but it has a lot of impact on the quality of life you live. So I don't like people, like, challenging my understanding of it. So what just comes out is communist, because communist is a slur in the United States, right? I think those Trump won flags are the same thing. Like, those, if you actually sit down and talk to those people, they are totally aware of all the times they lost in court. They're aware of how, like, nonsensical the claims of what, you know, of cheating were, and what a crazy conspiracy theory this stuff is. And when you press them on it, they'll just kind of blurt out, like, the voter irregularities. Like, they don't have, like, an argument, right? They just play word games. But Trump won isn't, like, a statement of reality. It's an abstract way of saying, I like Trump. I felt better when he was in charge. I don't feel good that so many of my neighbors rejected him when I saw him as so great, and I don't want to have to face the fact that I got suckered into this cult. So saying Trump won is not like a statement of reality. It's just like a statement of defiance. It's a challenge. It's a way of, like, lashing out and fighting back. I actually think this is, like, the strongest kind of framework of trying to understand MAGA or, like, hard right type of mentality. It's they don't have values, they don't have beliefs, they don't have, like, principles. They just play word games.